Welcome back to the Jessyl and Alex podcast, episode 2. We are not in the same location, and it is interesting because I am so used to feeding off of her energy that I don't have it next to me, and she is just giving me these vibes that she doesn't want to be here.
It's hot and it's been a long day.
So I'm sitting in Tampa Bay in a room in an apartment that is 75 degrees. I just had a blanket on because I'm cold because I got used to the Dominican Republic.
Well, I'm sitting here letting the beads off my sweat dry off with the AC that has been off all day. But
You look
I
amazing
turn
though.
it on for this. Yeah, there's no central air conditioning here in this house. And even if there were, the electricity bill probably wouldn't be worth it.
Oh man. All right. So for those listeners, episode 2, last episode I said, hey, we're gonna bring our friends on, and we were having so much fun that we didn't get them on. So maybe one time in the future we'll send them a link and we'll be able to do it. I don't have them this time on episode 2. So what are we gonna talk about today?
We're going to get into unschooling. I feel like it's a topic that comes up a lot. People ask a lot of questions, have misconceptions or curiosities about it. And our kids are now, older in the sense like we have now the years that we put this long into unschooling to say, hey, this has worked really well and what hasn't. And what does that look like for our family? Because at the end of the day, looks different for every single family.
So I'm gonna let you lead this one because you are the force behind our unschooling uh, movement. I say this so to speak because I just love how you deliver it. I was just listening to you yesterday, and you're saying that Grayson was practicing his cursive, and it's just so amazing that I've tried to get him to do that, and it's it's generated naturally, but you have a very good way to touch the kids, so to speak.
I mean, I didn't do anything. That was him asking to do it. But let's, I guess, start at the beginning of this journey. I came across unschooling when Grayson was probably around 6 months old, something like that, at a play group. One of my friends had mentioned it, and I had no idea what it was, but I dove into researching it, figuring out the information, like what it meant. And what I came across was that children are naturally curious creatures. They learn from their environment, they're constantly learning, like they're never not learning. And it's funny because most of us have said the same, like children are like sponges. But then when it comes to reading, writing, spelling, math, we all of a sudden think they're not sponges and that they're just not going to learn those things unless they sit behind a desk and have someone teach it to them. And now I can say with a lot of that, my children have learned it without ever having sat at a desk and without me ever having given a formal lesson or even followed a curriculum. So in our household for unschooling, we don't follow a curriculum. We have never done online programs, anything of that sort. I mean, like we haven't done those things. Now, that doesn't mean that I have not provided resources and things within our household to have available for them. I just haven't pushed any of that on them. So early on, honestly, it's been a lot of them asking questions, us answering it, me being present, and not giving them half answers or like if they ask me something, I actually try to explain the entire concept from beginning to end. If I don't know the answer, then I tell them, hey, that's a great question. Let me write it down. We'll finally answer when we get home. And I do have a notes in my phone that I keep for the children for all the questions they ask throughout the day that I can't answer. And we would then go home, either if we could find a book for it, go to a library, or resort to YouTube. I mean, we are very low tech when it comes to our children in the house, but that doesn't mean we hate technology and we don't use it. We utilize it when it has a purpose. So as far as for learning, things like that, I don't have an issue popping on a YouTube video so they can learn something. So yeah, that's pretty much been our journey the last few years. And the main focus, I would say, till like age 7 is mostly just play, is allowing the children to just play, to be in their body, to discover, to take risks, to, overcome sometimes fears of heights, things like that. Like I have really just focused on the play aspect the first 7 years. And then naturally they start shifting, they start asking different questions. Now they're starting to, want to know, how do the things work? How do you spell things? How do you write? How about this? How about that? And slowly that has been the evolution of my role in their learning as well. So yeah, I think
I
that's a snapshot, and we can get into the details of it all.
Yeah, no, I just want to say from my experience within all this, being in a traditional school, growing up in a traditional household, old, Giselle was in a traditional school too, and she has a traditional family. But for me, as the man of the family, when Giselle gave me this, "Hey, we're gonna unschool," I looked at her and laughed, like, "What are you talking about?" Because in my mind, schooling took place in an institution. It was the only way that you read, write, and do everything. So I was so resistant to that because I didn't know that unschooling was a thing. And I remember laughing and telling her, like, yeah, we're not doing that. And she was like, yeah, we are. She just like a straight, yeah, we are. So a couple days later, Jasil has always been so good at, I say force feeding me, but like giving me information. Early on, she would send article after article after article after article. If you saw our chat history, she blew it up. She was like one of those spouses that, hey, you're gonna get so much information that we're gonna have to make a decision on this. So she sent me this YouTube video of a teenager. I think he was like 11 or 12, and he was doing a TED talk, and his TED talk was on unschooling. And just watching how amazing this kid was, the words that he used, his language, his social skills, his delivery, I was like, man, this is pretty interesting. This is really interesting. So that was like the first experience to the unschooling conversation that we had. And then as the time progressed and the kids got older, I started to see the benefits of what Jasil was talking about, and seeing this natural curiosity of them, like they're learning and wanting to learn and to read and to write, and they learned all of these things on their own. You raised your hand.
Yeah. You're cutting in and out, so I'm not sure how your record on your behalf how your recording is, or if you see that. But just wanted to let you know that. But we'll continue onward, and you're frozen on my screen.
Hopefully, it's a good face.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. So, real quick, babe, we're in the middle of this podcast episode. I'm not going to edit it out because this is the first time in a long time that we have done podcasts away from each other. The Riverside platform, it's not really good quality as you're loading, but when you upload it, it will be really high quality. So we were breaking up and
Okay.
our quality's not the best, but we're there.
All right. Well, yes, I did overload Alex with information at the time because I wanted him to learn what I was learning. And eventually reached the point that I realized that he wasn't really going to dive into the information the way I was. He was caught up with work and his career and all of that. And the home stuff was really on me. And I remember like reaching a point with many different decisions when it came to the kids of like, you know what? If you're not going to read the information and we can't have these conversations, then I'm kind of just going to take over. This is my role in our, life to take lead of the children. And yes, I will talk to you here and there about making big decisions and, making big decisions in their lives. But at the end of the day, I was like, I need to make the decision that I think is best for us because I'm the one diving into this information and reading this stuff. And I also knew, like, I also grew up in a very traditional household as far as like go to school, go to college, get your degree. I knew that it was going to take time to unravel that, conditioning that we all have, that if you don't go to school, you don't go to college, that you won't be successful in life. But even at that point in my life, I could see that there's, that's also not true. There's so many people who are successful who have never gone to college, have never gotten a degree. And it's not just up to that solely to be a successful person or to have a life that you love, and that's what's important to me, is that my children love the life they're living, that they're passionate about it, that they're happy. So if that means doing something completely different than what we're used to, then that's what I want them to do. Um,
I was just gonna say that you were really good at giving me the information and asking me for feedback, and you know, obviously she implemented it at home a lot of the times because she was at home, but it wasn't like a hey, I'm doing this and you're not included. She'd always open the door to me to be included, so I loved about that. But one of the things with unschooling that it really opened my eyes when I started to see our kids flourish was that I for my own experience, I hated school. Like I couldn't sit down, like I didn't want to sit down in a classroom and learn and do all the things that you do in school. So now as I progress with the kids, I I think it's important that I want to cultivate an environment where, like you said, they're happy and they're connected, they're innovative, they're creative. There's many ways to solve problems. They have critical thinking, things of that nature. And so I I want them to have a voice, and I know that you're the same and how we're raising the kids. But it's just so beautiful on how we can facilitate that outside of four walls.
I have a little fly on the wall. Little,
Hey, Nineveh.
little is hiding in the corner. So yeah, throughout the years, the biggest thing that people worry about is like, will they learn how to read? Will they learn how to write? I read this book written by Ben Hewitt called Homegrown, and he explained how his children naturally learn how to read, and it's actually a part of natural development that if we don't take them to school and teach them, usually by the age 8 to 11. For boys it tends to be a little later than girls, not always the case, but majority, that they learn a little bit later than girls to read and write, that his boys learned how to do it on their own. So I had this, I guess, sort of like, okay, it's not going to happen at 6 and 7. It's going to happen a little later. And they did get interested in like writing letters to their parents or birthday cards, things like that. So slowly they were learning these things, but I never took into account, or I never like tested them like, oh, how many words can they spell? How many this? How many that? And then one day Grayson was 9 and I just handed him something. And I was like, you know what? I want to test his reading skills. Like, I want to see how far he can get on this. And I gave it to him. And I want to say he read it with like 90% accuracy. There was a few words that he was trying to sound out, try to figure out. But this was like, I had no idea if he could read 5 words or if he was actually going to be able to read the whole thing. But I was just like, I want to see, because I knew that he did know some things. Like we had seen him reading signs and street and like things in passing. So we knew that he recognized words. And I was actually very impressed, because even the words that he didn't know, having never taught him phonetics and like sat down like, oh, this letter and this letter make this sound and all that stuff, he was actually doing the phonetics naturally correctly. And that was like another big thing. Like, I remember sitting down for hours doing phonetics in school, like making all the this, that, a, b, and just, yeah. And it's like, it kind of looks and sounds ridiculous. And when you realize that for some kids that might work really, really well, but for other kids that may not. And another of the reasons that I took this approach was Grayson, for very early on, I could see that Grayson was never going to be the desk. study, sit down kid. Like that was very obvious to me from the moment he started walking. I said, this kid has more energy than most children that I am around. And he's still, he's calmed down a bit with age and maturity, but in a sense that energy still lives inside of him. Like he is the kid who can go and go hard and go long. And
Yeah.
when he does sit down, it's like that's not really his thing. And that doesn't mean he never does it. He does sit down sometimes, he reads books, we have Kindle, he'll listen to audibles, things like that. He does it, but he is less inclined to want to do that unless it's coming from himself. So I've also been very aware of not forcing him to sit down to do things because it's going to turn into a fight. It's going to turn into an argument. It's going to turn into him not wanting to do whatever is the task at hand. So they have come to me and said, hey, I want to learn how to do math. Hey, I want to learn how to write cursive. I want to learn these things. And I have gotten them the workbooks. I have no issue. I'm like, here we go. Let's sit down. And I will do those things with them. But it was never me forcing them, like, today, this is what we're doing. It's always been them approaching me and having that. Now that they're getting older, I'm having them, sit down and give me those goals. Like, okay, give me a goal. What is something you want to accomplish by this time frame? What is a new skill you want to learn? So a lot of it does come with me providing the structure, but providing that space within the structure for them to then take lead and charge on doing these things. So it's a balance, right? Of allowing the person to do it at their own, in a sense, in their own pace, but also providing them some structure to know in the direction that we're going. That it's not like, oh, we're just lazy and we don't care about learning and these things don't matter in life. It's not that they don't matter. It's just we're taking a different approach.
Yeah. I think, I'm going a different route for a second. We'll come back to this. Like for those that are listening about like the whole framework of unschooling, I think it's important to educate ourselves on the conditioning that we've received from society on the expectations of when children should learn, like reading and writing and arithmetic and how it is supposed to happen. It's like a one size fits all type concept. And that's what really opened my eyes when I started to see Grayson and Hayden learning how to read. They taught themselves how to read was because we they did it because they wanted to. Where in school, like they start teaching at a young age, and by 5, 6, 7, you're like reading. So when Grayson was 9 and he was just starting to learn how to read, in my mind, I was like, man, he's behind the curve. But reality is that's the natural progression of how children learn with natural curiosity. And that book, How Children Learn by John Holt, that you mentioned before, like that helped me understand that alone. And then also just the concept of schooling. Like, why was it created? It was created for the government to be able to create jobs for factories and companies. And that's, I don't want my children to do that. I want my children to be innovators and thinkers and creators. Now, if my children want to go down that path, we support them. I know that me and you've had this conversation. Like, we'll support them in whatever they want to do. If they want to be a doctor, a lawyer, whatever the case may be, we will help them with the required schooling. But it's just like, it comes back to our own choice as people.
And our kids have done small stints in private schools. One was when they were 1, 3.5, and 5.5. They went for about a school year. It was a private, at the time, unschooling school, but they did have some schoolwork there, but they had a lot more freedom than a regular school would have. And, one of the issues that arose there is just, you don't know where anybody else is coming from, what's going on in their households, all of this stuff. So when you put all these kids in a room, it doesn't, unless you have like a 2-to-1, 1-to-1, people watching them, like things happen, things get said, things get done, and they don't get corrected. Then your kids come home with that, or they learn things that you don't want them to, or they see things that you don't want them to. And that was like one of my, I guess, of like at that moment, I was like, okay, maybe I'm okay doing this if it's a private school. And I realized that even in a private school, you still have the same issues that happen in public school. And then again, we tried for, I think, a few months the following school year, and it was the same school. They had then switched their curriculum a bit, and they were a little more focused on teaching the kids with the curriculum that they had adopted. And then it was bullying, Gracie getting bullied. And once again, I'm like, this wouldn't happen if he was at home. And granted, like I talked to him, I had many conversations and told him how to handle it. I tried to talk to him in school, and they kind of brushed it off like, oh, we have a system in school to handle this, blah, blah, blah. But point is, a few months later, I find out that the kid does get kicked out of the school. And it was just, he was really good at lying. So people were believing him, and it was a he said, she said type thing. But once again, it was like reinforced in me, like, I don't want my kid going to school and dealing with this and dealing with whatever other kids are dealing with and getting treated in this way. And that's not to say in their own home, they don't do things to each other. But I can control who we're around. And if we're around people that I've never been around before or children, I'm very hyper aware where that's not the teacher's job. Granted, I get it. Maybe they have 20, 30 students. That's not the teacher's job to do that. So I take that responsibility on myself to know who my children are around, who we're hanging out with, and whatever quality of people they are. I don't hang around with just anyone. I don't just let anyone come around my kids. Um, it's been that way for many years, and I don't think it's going to change, and that's not to say that I'm shielding them from the realities of life. Like they've seen plenty, they've heard stories, all of that. But I also harp on them, like choosing quality people. We have a choice of who we surround ourselves by, who we're learning, and who we listen to. So always choosing those high quality people that are more in line with what we want for ourselves. And that's what I tell them. Find people who are doing things that you want to accomplish. And those are the people that you want to learn from. Don't go to the people who aren't accomplishing or doing things that you want for yourself or that you want for a future life. Like there's not much to learn from there.
I also like how you tied that into there about like the people that we surround our kids with, because when you think about unschooling or even homeschooling, the first thing is like, aren't you worried that your kid's going to be socially awkward? And from my own experience, it actually feels it's like the opposite way around. Like all of the unschooling kids or the homeschooled kids that were around, they can verbalize, they can articulate, they can talk to many different people, not just their age group. Whereas in the school kids, they're tied to their age category. They don't want to talk to other people.
It's a
And
double-edged sword. I will say sometimes, our kids feel very comfortable around adults and talking to adults and things like that. And sometimes, even with us, I have to remind them, like, we're not the same. Like, you're
yeah,
my child, I'm your parent. We're not the same because for them, they really don't have that notion of age group where, you're the adult and I'm the child and that kind of thing. Like, they're with us all day long. And like, yeah, they know we're their parents. But I do feel like when you go to school, there's this certain indoctrination of following the authority, respecting the authority, and like never ever talking back to the authority. And honestly, I don't believe in that 100%. I think that children should talk back within reasonable, situations. I think that children should be allowed and taught to do that. It's the way you learn how to speak up for yourself. It's the way that you learn how to advocate for yourself. And I tell my children, as long as you're doing it respectfully, we can have a conversation about it. Like, I won't allow you to scream at me, but if you say, hey, mom, I didn't like when you did this, cool, let's have the conversation. I don't have an issue with that. And then there's some things that I'm like, I agree that you didn't like that. It still has to get done, right? Like, that's my job as a parent. Like, sometimes we can have that conversation. It doesn't mean I'm going to change my mind about the decision that was made. But, like I said, sometimes it's a double-edged sword because our kids are very verbal. They will talk back to us. They will say these things. And, I have learned to navigate that with them because the first few times, obviously, it kind of feels like a smack in the face. I couldn't even breathe hard around my mom. Like if I breathed too deep, she was like, what?
I catch you.
So, uh, I'm learning with them. And I tell them that, like, look, even if it's an adult and it feels scary, it is okay to speak up for yourself. I said, just do it respectfully. As long as you are you're just trying to gain fairness for yourself, or you don't understand something, or you want to have something explained, whatever it is, like don't feel scared just because they're an adult. And I have never had anyone come back and tell me that my children are bad behaved, that they go mouthing off, any of that. I actually is quite the opposite. A lot of people are constantly giving us compliments, and Alex and I laugh about it because we're like, well, that's not what we always see at home. With us, our kids are different when they're out in public. They are very respectful of adults, and they don't go around just like treating it like the way they interact with us is different than the way they interact with the outside world, which is the way it should be. We're the parents, we're the safety, we're the people at home. We are the people that your children should be in their most natural state, which isn't the most pleasant always, but it's who they really are.
Yeah, I think that well, I like that you talked about the whole we allow them to talk back because I was talking with our friends on the when we went on the hike, Derek and I, and when I told him that, he stopped and he was like, "What?" And that's kind of like an eye-catching thing of allowing your kids to talk back because even when I think about it initially, and I have to breathe a lot because I wasn't granted that permission, so there's a lot of uh, there's a lot of things that come up when the kids talk back, but it is about being able to create young people that can vocalize what they're going through and then also standing up for themselves because I don't want obedient children. I want respectful children, but I don't want obedient children. And so it's like having to peel the layers back of what obedience versus respect looks like and how we can cultivate respect in the everyday life. So I love that you brought that up because there is so many kids out there that aren't given that space of like, hey, talking back and voicing their own thoughts and advocating for themselves. But I also think that we have, like you said, you have to have boundaries around it so the kids don't take it to the next level. There's been times where I have given space for our kids to speak, and they've taken it past, and it's like gotten me to a point where I'm like, no, 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 no. Like I get frustrated. So I like how you said that, and being able to navigate that social, I say social construct, but like the whole thing of like kids, you're not going to talk back. They're going to just follow.
Yeah, I mean, I tell my kids sometimes, like, look, I'm open to negotiating. Pr- propose something worth negotiating. So I teach them these skills because it's part of life. I remember when I first started going out on my own slowly, like without having my parents there, just being scared to approach a counter, to ask for something at a grocery store, anything, because I always had my parents do that for me. I didn't have to be the one. So even now at this early age, I send my, hey, go ask for this. Oh, no, I'm scared. I don't want to. That's okay. They're not going to eat you. Go do it. Right. It teaches them to have this awareness, but also the strength within themselves are like, oh, it's okay. I can do things without mom and dad. Because at the same, if an emergency happens, if they need to call for help or anything, these are the kids that might hide in a corner, might not just step out and do it because why? They're scared. They've never done it. They've never stepped into this part of themselves. And it's difficult. So I more see my unschooling approach as just a real life approach, real life skills of what we actually need to be humans. And in the process of doing all that, we're learning. And also, a big part of my unschooling has been lots of outdoors. I have rarely ever just been indoors, like, oh, I'm just home all day long every day. That's not me. I know parents who do that, works for them, great, but that's never been my approach. So when they were younger and we were living in the United States, my schedule was 3 days outdoors, 2 days indoors. So I could catch up on cooking, cleaning, all of that, because I was the only parent, at home while Alex is working a full-time job. So a lot of the home stuff fell on me. So that was and then weekends were spent as a family. So that was my approach at the time while the kids were younger. Then once we started RVing, I mean, we were outdoors all the time. Then we moved here and we had a baby. But there's phases in life where we slow down. Like right now, it's a phase of life that's a lot slower. Our pace is slow. We're not traveling. We don't get outdoors as much in the sense of doing different adventures. The kids are like at the beach every day, but it's kind of the same routine here. And I'm okay with that because I know everything else that we've done the past 10 years. And I know that this isn't going to be our life for the next 10 years. So I'm just like, it's also okay that maybe for a year, you're not going out, you're not exploring, you're not doing all these things. So now my approach of unschooling them is changing. I'm having to restructure the way we do things because while we were traveling, learning was just flying off the handle everywhere we went. It was millions of questions a month of what is this and how do they do this? And well, like it didn't stop. Now here, that's not so much the case. There's a lot less exposure to new things. So this is where I'm more focusing on building them and what they want to do with themselves and their characters and their skills and their goals and things like that. It's a different approach versus we're going outdoors and we're seeing things and we're learning from the world around us. And now we're just honing in on, home skills, learn how to cook, learn how to clean, learn how to do all these things without me having to tell you, without me having to nag. And we also have a reward system that's tied into this. Like I pay my kids money for doing certain things in the house, and it's not just chores, is also reading, is also learning, is also being kind. They're incentivized with all of this, which I know some parents are like, heck no, I would never do that. That's great, cool. But at the end of the day, you're still buying your kids toys, you're still giving them money for things. So what I do is I don't buy them toys, I don't give them money for things, I don't buy them extra treats when we're out and about. That all comes out of their paycheck. Why? Because if I'm paying you already to do all these things, then I shouldn't need to now provide for this. And that's what I tell them. I think this can go two ways. You can get paid for doing these things, and then you pay for all those things that you want yourself, or you don't get paid for any of it. But I say when I want to say yes, I wouldn't want to say no. So it's
Yeah.
worked well.
I was going to say the biggest takeaway for me in all of this is the skill set piece, right? Is like seeing what we're doing as life skills because they're not teaching that in schools. And this isn't a podcast that we're attacking schools, but for us, it's more of like, hey, we're really leaning into the life skills aspect and being able to create humans that can, operate in real life, not just when like in an organization or working for someone else. So like that's the biggest eye-opening experience for me because as the leader as a leader in our family, I'm still navigating how to facilitate that type of learning to my kids because I wasn't around as like my father wasn't around me as much. So now it's like for a long time in that process it was like, well, I can't do that. And now it's getting the opportunity, like as simple as learning how to build a fire and watching the boys build fires. We've been doing that lately a few times, and man, they're so good at it. And then also watching them do other hobbies and interests that they have. And Caden, he's just so studious and he loves learning language. And Grayson is, the other day they called me and they were like, "Hey dad, I need to fix this bed that I broke."
They
And
were
they got
so they were
everything out. They asked me some questions.
they were jumping on the bed,
Go ahead.
and they both like tackled themselves into the corner, and the whole box spring just fell. And as soon as they did it, I was like, "You guys broke the bed." And they're like, "No, no, no. All we got to do is lift it back up and put it into place." But I knew it was a box spring on like just these little corner wooden pieces. It wasn't like slats. And I was like, "No, no, you guys broke it." And then they lift it up and they're like, "Oh yeah, we broke it." They're like, and I was like, "Look, it's all good. Figure out how to fix it." And they went to the, to a closet, they get the drill, they get everything. And then they're like, "How do I use this?" And I was like, "Well, that's where you got to make a phone call." I said, "Call your dad. He will walk you through everything." And I walked away. I didn't stay there to babysit them or anything. And then they called Alex.
Yeah. So they called me and they were able to fix this bed from me being, 800 miles away in Florida and they're at the Dominican Republic. And it just was really fulfilling as I sat back and watched them get excited in fixing that. And then also like just mentioning a few days ago, I mentioned about the one of our garbage area needed some zip ties on the chicken wire. And I just mentioned it, and just so mentions this morning that they took care of it. So like that's the type of skills like getting after and doing things that like it can be challenging to a point, but being able to understand on how to do it. And this just goes into other things as well. as we grow and as we evolve as a family, continually building these skill sets so we can all share the load, so to speak, as we grow,
And that's a
and that's
big
the
part of
biggest.
it. I have so many moms saying, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it. You have so many kids. It's because I'm not doing it by myself. I am teaching my children independence. I'm teaching them to have skills to actually do a lot of things by on their own. I am not doing everything for them. I do not go around picking up after them. I do not go around serving them food, cleaning their dishes, cleaning every mess that they made. I've stopped doing that a long time ago. And I'm like, it's your stuff. You have to want to clean up after yourself. You have to want to keep a clean home. And these are conversations that we have in the daily. Like, it's not just, oh, clean up because it feels like we have sat down and said, hey, what feels better? You have a messy home or when you have a clean home? Right. And they've reached these conclusions that it feels better to have a clean home. And I'm like, okay, well, if you know that that's what feels good, then let's keep it that way. Let's make that happen. The boys are a little more, trained. I'm still working with the girls. Like, they're still 7 and 5. So they're still very much in training. Not that the boys aren't also in training, but they're in a different, phase of training where, like, the girls, they need a lot more reminders, and I need to be after them a lot more than I do with the boys. Like, the boys can do a lot of this on their own. I don't have to supervise anymore. Sometimes they need reminders. Cool. But the girls, different story. But my point is, like, if you start this from a young age, then they will get to that point. You're not having to do it all for them.
I think, I just want to. A lot of people say that it's. A lot of people say that it's. How do I want to say this? Like with homeschooling, it's really another thing for me that I've loved is that we get to spend so much more time with them, but it's really challenging as well. Like, I want to dive into the real aspect of it. It's like being around our kids all the time. That, and not that they're like hard kids, but it's just like you spend so much time with them. So it's like, hey, how do I not be too much into what they're doing, but also giving them that space? Do you know what I'm saying?
I don't have that, so maybe you can speak on that because I've been home with them forever. But you're the one who was working, who then came into the dynamic. So you have a very different experience than I do. Like, for me, this is
Yeah.
this
Okay.
is
So then I'll just
like
I'll talk
for
on what I'm.
the last 11 years.
Yeah. So I guess where I'm going with this is like for parents that are thinking about doing this, coming into homeschooling, there is a deschooling process. Like, there's this process that you really have to just unlearn everything that you've learned before and eliminate the expectations. Because I know for me, as I've entered the home and being home more like fully, there's been challenges being around the kids, but that's based off of external expectations and ideas and beliefs on how learning has occurred. So this whole unschooling process really is also a deschooling process for the parent. It's a whole process that you have to go through as well. And so, like, that's what I want to hit on, because it's not. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's always rainbows and butterflies. Like, we have challenging moments with the kids, and
Well,
there's
yeah, I mean,
days where and I'm
it's not
speaking on
always
my
perfect.
experience.
They're not perfect. They're learning, and no, I was just saying, they're not perfect. They're still learning. But for me, as far as the space, honestly, like, people ask, like, "Oh, how do you do it?" I've been in here recording this podcast for as long as I have, and I can hear them. They're just happily playing in the living room. Like, I don't feel me to be there watching them in this. That doesn't mean that they always do that. Sometimes they fight it and they're arguing and they're blah blah blah. But my point is, there's plenty of these moments throughout the entire day where they're just playing. Sometimes they're 2 hours out in the pool just playing. So I am not constantly looking after them, taking care of them, doing things for them, because I also believe of teaching them this level of independence to where I can be with them, but I have my alone time. Like, I don't have to worry every single minute of the day what they're doing. Granted, it's also their age. Like, when they're younger, that's just that comes with the job. When they're 6 months old, 10 months old, a year old, a year and a half, like, you have to be on them. You have to be watching them because they're little. They get into things. they're going through that curiosity stage. But now at 5, 7, 9, and 11, my life looks very different. I have a lot more free time throughout my day. I can relax, and then we have these moments of coming together and having good conversations or sitting down or teaching them something or helping them with something. It's just, it's become just another aspect of our life. Like, it's not for us, homeschooling, unschooling is not this thing that we have a schedule for, that we have to make a time frame. Like, there might be weeks that go by that we might not open up a book, but then we know that there's months where that's all we do day in and day out. So once again, for me, it's not just, and I always tell this to parents, don't look at it in small segments, look at it into chunks of years, right? Has your child learned in the last 5 years? What have they learned? What have you seen? Because if we start looking at like week by week or even year by year, it might seem like they're not reaching these goals. But the way we approach life, the way we teach our kids, you really have to look at it in chunks of years, because so much is compressed into that. You don't always see it. It's like this puzzle being created. And at the end of the day, if the puzzle is 5 hours and you only spent 30 minutes, you're going to think, oh no, we failed. We couldn't do it. But it's just, you haven't given it enough time. So with our kids, that's where we're at now. Now we're at a point where we can look back and say, "Oh, look, all of this that we've been doing actually worked." Because look at where they're at right now. And now we're getting a very different stage. Where we have an 11-year-old, soon to be 12 at the end of the year, and his needs, his wants, his desires are changing. His need for leadership is changing, in the sense of, I don't feel like it's my job to lead him into the next few years of his life. I feel like I've done my job as a mother up until this point, and now I feel like it's time for me to hand over the reins. And it's like, Dad, this is on you. Like, it is on you to begin to shape and form the man that he needs to be. And that doesn't mean that I'm completely out of the picture, but I think that I am now back burner in a sense. Dad's on full burner because the type of leadership he needs right now is from a man, is from his father. It's from all those things that are gonna form him and create him to be the man of the future. And to me, like I said, I feel like I've done all I could as a mom till this point, and now the rest is for dad. Like, I will continue to do what I do, but it's it's a different essence coming from me than coming from his father.
Yeah, I wanted to say something that maybe a few minutes ago that you were talking about, but that in my opinion, especially with learning, comparison kills. So like sitting down with your child, like for us, sitting down and getting those goals and those milestones that we want to hit, and like making it child centric to the person, and not comparing out externally to others, because like children learn at different levels and it's so individualized that, like as a parent, if you start saying, oh, he's not reading at the level of, this
Yeah.
person or this person or this person, you're really cutting their confidence level. You're really cutting them down. It's like, hey, set these milestones, set these goals. What is it that you want your child to learn? What does your child want to learn? And then work towards it with them instead of comparing outside.
I mean, just think about
That's
athletes, even like an athlete, right? You can't try to be the best in the industry. You can only be better than you were yesterday. Like, at the end of the day, the only competition you have is you. And that's what I try to teach my children too. Is like, if you are better than you were last week, last month, last year, then you're progressing. And that's what you need to focus on. Your focus should be on yourself, not what everybody else is doing. Everybody else is going to learn everything at different speeds. And I also tell them, like, somebody might be really good at math. Maybe they suck at reading. Maybe they're really good at reading, or they suck at science. Who knows? Like, it's all different.
Yeah. I mean, I also want to say too, you were talking about like transitioning and saying, "Hey, dad's full on." I think that's the most important thing, especially with like children, is like young men need to be taught by more men. And I think it's not just one man collectively. You have to surround your kids. Like for instance, Grayson, we have to surround Grayson. I have to surround Grayson with other young, like high performing men that I value, that I respect, that I am aligned with on how I want them to help me raise my child. And what I mean by that is like it, the whole concept that it takes a village to raise a child. I really believe that children grow from having those other relationships as well. For a long time, I didn't believe that, but now I'm in this phase of my life where I see the value of having other healthy masculine men that are doing the work on themselves and understanding, their strengths and even their areas where they need to improve. So that's I believe as we transition with Grayson, like that's where leaning into and doing activities with him and spending quality time with him alone because Caden is so big that if I tie Caden into just, hey, let's go, Caden, we're gonna do it. But he is mentally in a different area of his life. And there's some individualized learning that needs to happen with Grayson.
Yeah, and I'm gonna talk real quick because a lot of people ask this question of how do they graduate? Can they go to college? Blah blah blah. The answers to all the is yes, yes, and yes. At least for us as United States citizens or children or United States citizens, we fall under the umbrella of homeschooling. So if they ever decide that they want to go back to school or they want to take college classes or they want to go to the university, get their bachelor's degree, associates, whatever it is, the answer is yes to all of it. To keep it real short and simple, I don't feel like diving into the details of this. You guys can research it. But the point is, I, as their quote unquote school, would write them a transcript and graduate them. And then with that, they would be able to go to higher learning. And if it were, obviously a different school, then same thing, they would test into what grade can they go, and they would also go. So the answer to that is yes, yes, and yes. By us unschooling, we're not cutting their opportunities to be able to pursue that if that is what they wish to do. How do I see unschooling in the future for us? Oh man, I want to keep traveling. That's for sure high on both of our lists. We want to keep traveling the world. It's such an amazing way to learn and just to be in it, experiencing, seeing things firsthand. When we were doing this, honestly, I feel like every day was a learning day. Like something we were always learning like really cool things everywhere we went as a family during our travels. So I really enjoy that aspect of it. Like even for us as adults, like there was always something new. And that is what I foresee for us in the future, like still throwing in travels here and there throughout the year. But a big part of it is just I'm really focused on skills for the kids right now for these next few years, at least for the boys. I'm really focused on them learning like what is something that you want to learn to do, and let's see it through completion. And we've been working on that slowly. There's things that they've told me throughout the year, and we are doing it here at home. We're working on it. We get the resources to do it. But the whole point of this conversation is unschooling is just another form of homeschooling. And the way you mix it, the way you do it is your choice. I know plenty of people who do with some curriculum, light curriculum, no curriculum, all of that. And I think the other biggest part of our journey is that we don't do electronics. In a sense, like my kids don't have iPads. They don't. We have a laptop dedicated to them if they want to learn something, if they want to bake a recipe, things like that. We will allow them on electronics, but it is not part of their everyday learning, and it is not part of their everyday usage, or it comes with intentionality. It's not just something they have the freedom to use in whatever they want. And, many people will argue on this back and forth, but from what I've read, the research I've done, I don't think it's worth the side effects on children to allow them to have that type of freedom on electronics or screens, especially at these very young ages. As they grow up, things may change, but for now, I think that we both agree that electronics will stay limited. If you have any other questions about unschooling or homeschooling, comment on our Instagram, leave it down below on the podcast itself, or send us a private message. Thanks for joining us on episode 2 of season 3. We'll see you next Monday.